Compass Mining makes Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone. Start mining in as little as 48 hours with our turnkey hardware, online, and mining directly to your Bitcoin wallet within 2 business days. Find out more at compassmining.io and get started now. Hey, morning miners, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the new home of power mining analysis. Monday morning, big pullback in the price of Bitcoin over the weekend. Obviously, the Bitcoin miners are responding in a big way, really red across the board this morning, but that's okay. Exactly as Freedom predicted in our live TA session on Friday. We're going to be following up on that, obviously talking about the macro Bitcoin metrics, including difficulty, global hash rate, and Bitcoin price, as this is now the final day of Q3, which has big impacts, especially for any of the miners that use FASB accounting and have a big HODL on balance sheet. Now, in addition to that, we've got Miner Madness starting up tomorrow, some industry updates and news from your favorite miners, and a lot more to get through in today's presentation. Now, before we do, you know the deal. Smash the like button. Big help to myself and the channel. Anthony loves it. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join. And let us know in the comment section below if you're adding to any positions today, how you're feeling about the miner sector overall, and your outlook in terms of the price of Bitcoin heading into the final quarter of this year. Now, with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay, guys, so that's right. Monday morning, Anthony, you're back from your travels. We'll hear about that in a second. Typical Monday fashion here. We've got a big sell-off both in Bitcoin and obviously in Bitcoin miners. It seems the correlation definitely works to the downside, Anthony. Now, a couple of important factors we wanted to talk about. We had Freedom by 40 on Friday. He actually predicted a slight pullback in the price of Bitcoin, representing one of the last opportunities to really top up your position. So we want to explore that thesis. It's also the last day of Q3, which is going to have big implications on the FASB adhering miners, especially those with big HODLs. So we're going to talk about that as well, Anthony. And we've got our Miner Madness competition kicking off tomorrow. So good thing you made it back in time because we have a busy week. First and foremost, Anthony, how are you doing? Welcome back. How was the conference on the weekend?
Yeah, it was a good conference in Frankfurt. So it's a proof of work conference there, and met a lot of new friends out there. A lot of people I've not seen before at other conferences. So yeah, the Bitcoin word is spreading around. I also met quite a few people that I have met. So Dennis Porter was there, and Daniel Batten, who's very big in the eco side of Bitcoin, make sure that the FUD is terminated as soon as possible because we get a lot of FUD out there, and Daniel and a team of people are doing some great work in the space to sort of rectify that and make sure the correct news is going out there, and pulling really major news channels who release this as well, and putting and questioning them on what they're trying to do and where they're getting their information from, because he's got access to real data. And it's something that I've been doing, with articles over the last 2 or 3 years for Compass Mining, in terms of, occasionally I write an article about the FUD that goes out there and trying to explain that these miners are using, renewable energy. They're balancing the grid when they need to. It's a great way to keep the grid balanced. It's no use having, 40 gigawatts of power if you're only using, 30 gigawatts of power a small fraction of the time. You want to make sure that that power is used, and the revenues from that power go back into in certain instances, and we've seen this from some of the states in America, goes back into the communities. So it's a great way of keeping their bills down. I mean, remember the article last week? I think it was in Scandinavia, where the locals refused, or wanted to get rid of a mining company, and they won. And then they realised that the electricity bills were going to go up by 20%. So not a great win for them. But, these are the things that you've got to bear in mind. What these companies are also doing is affecting reducing the cost sometimes for domestic supply. So, but yeah, great conference. Got to meet the Hive team. They were one of the big sponsors of the conference. And actually, during that 3 days, was invited to go and visit some of Hive's facilities up in Boden, which is very north part of Sweden. So that was a real opportunity to go and see those. Got to see my first HPC data center, so that was a tick in the box there. And I got to see the fact they're using some of the latest S21 Pro miners as well in Sweden there. So really great to meet the operations team there. They've been there. Some of the people have been there about 7 years and really delivering great operational results. And we know that because Hive, month by month over the last 4 years, I've either been in first or second place for literally every month in the last 4 years. So they operate really well, and it was a chance to get to see some of those operations. They do operate in a number of other countries, but it was a time to go and visit Sweden, and the opportunity was, and it was a great day to go and see it. But a lot of travel involved, obviously. So still recovering, as I only got back in the country today about a few hours ago. So ready to go on with the podcast today, Bryce.
Yeah, no sleep for the wicked. Anthony just got off the plane. I said, no, no, buddy, you get on the podcast. 7 years in the Bitcoin mining industry. I think that's like dog years or something, Anthony. That's the equivalent to probably 5 careers in any other industry. So that's pretty impressive when you consider many of these miners, the companies haven't even been around 7 years. So shout
Absolutely.
out
Well,
to
well,
Hive.
actually, Hive celebrated 7 years this month, so they've been public. They're the oldest public miner, so they're the oldest, followed by Bitfarms, and then you've got some of the sort of like new players to the game, and you can put CleanSpark, TeraWulf, and IREN in that bracket there because they're not much more than 3 years. In fact, IREN IPO'd, I think it was November 2021, so that's less than 3 years. CleanSpark and TeraWulf and CIFR as well. Not much longer than that. In fact, CIFR really started their hashing self-mining back in, I think it was May or June 2022. So look where they've come from now. So, Hive are the sort of like the OGs in terms of, of the mining companies. But you've seen a lot of change in that last 7 years. And now we've got sort of, a good group of big miners that are growing and growing on a daily basis.
Yeah, we certainly do. Incredible to think of the growth over the last few years for some of these publicly traded miners. Now, speaking of miners, Anthony, I wanted to bring up our mid-morning market update. I've also got the hash price graph and difficulty we can come on to in a second. However, we did have Freedom by 40 on Friday. We did the technical analysis in your absence. He was predicting a slight pullback in the neighborhood of 10 to 15% and mentioned this may be one of the last buying opportunities to top up your positions. I'm really starting to look at red days as an opportunity now, Anthony, because they're few and far between. And I think at some point here, we're going to stop seeing these and we're going to go on a real run sooner rather than later. So red across the board today, some of the miners in excess 10% down on the session. However, if you're looking at this as a long-term investor, this may be a great opportunity to top up some of those positions. Anthony, anything you're seeing on the mid-morning market update that surprises you here? Essentially red across the board, at least at the time we pulled this one.
Yeah, no real surprises. Bitcoin price is down a few percent this morning as well. So we've seen it, 66 over the weekend. We were hoping for it to continue to opening today, but it decided to drop drastically from sort of like last night and, hovering under 64,000 now. But bear in mind, we've looked at the last 3 months and it's right in the middle of the range over the last 3 months. So take a longer view to this Bitcoin. Don't look at it too much on a daily basis. But you're quite right about these red days now may be an opportunity. If you look at the last cycle, the last quarter of 2020, we started to see mining companies really motor. And actually, if I think back to myself, that period, this was about the time I entered the space by buying Marathon Digital for the first mining company I ever purchased, and it was just a couple of dollars a share. And by early 2021, not much longer after I bought them, we saw that stock and a number of other mining stocks really take off. I mean, we're talking, people talk about a 10x now. Some of these were massively more than 10x, and a lot of miners as well. So we know that Bitcoin goes in cycles. We're into this not this cycle now, and it's around about this time that we've seen the Bitcoin price in previous cycles start to move. And we've been saying post-halving, 5, 6 months post-halving. And so this is an opportunity today. If you see the red there on the mining stocks, a chance to maybe, if you didn't take advantage last week, it's an opportunity to have a look and see if you want to take advantage this week. But there's not many more days left. We're getting towards the end of the year now, and so if things follow as previously, a rally's due.
It certainly is. Now, I want to touch on hash price difficulty next up, but before we do, Anthony, this graph from Crypto Rover, we brought this up going into September, talking about the fact that September has historically been a red month for Bitcoin. Now, if we're able to finish green here today, obviously that has big implications on FASB reporting companies, which we'll come on to, but it also leads us to a very bullish pattern here. You'll notice on the screen, in the situations where September has been green in the past, there was 3 examples. In every one of those 3 examples, that meant all 3 months, in Q4 finished green. October, as they're calling it now, is historically a very strong month for Bitcoin. So it's looking as though history may be starting to at least rhyme with itself, if not repeat itself, heading into Q4. Now, in addition to that, Anthony, we got ETF volumes from HODL 15 on Friday. We were talking about the fact that we saw this snowball starting to roll, 366 million going in on the 26th. Then we had 500 million or close to it on the Friday. So really starting to see that momentum, that inertia, that snowball, or as we recall, FOMO, starting to kick in, Anthony. So some interesting updates there. Again, not necessarily saying history will repeat itself, but it's definitely starting to move in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of green days on that chart there, and 1.1 billion in the week of inflows. It's still relentless. And bear in mind, this is amounts massively more than the actual daily production. So they're having to buy Bitcoin. People are going to have to sell it to them because that there's only 450 Bitcoin produced each day at the moment, and these ETFs are eating up more than 450 Bitcoin. In terms of 494,000, that's significantly more than that price there. So, it's a good indicator. We didn't have this last year, so when we're looking at September, October, November last year, there was no ETFs then. So we've got the ETFs now, still constantly far more green days than red days. We did have a end of August, beginning of September, a group of red days together, but that was the only period that we've had significant red days during the whole of the 9 months this year since the ETFs were approved.
Sure. Yeah, very interesting to see this development. And like you say, Anthony, this is a new X factor that we didn't have last year or any other year. Now, speaking of X factors, Bitcoin difficulty up over 10 and a half minutes, 10 minutes, 45 seconds this week. So we're going to be looking at a reduction or an easing of the difficulty, Anthony. This is obviously welcome news to the miners as well. In addition to hash price, starting to see some tailwinds for the sector.
Yeah, I mean, we're still 9 days away from the next difficulty change, and so things can change a lot more towards that end there. But 10 minutes 45 means that it's taking longer than the 10-minute block requirement, and so if it continues to maintain that level of more than 10 minutes, difficulty will be reduced to let the miners have a chance of mining a block every 10 minutes, which means that effectively there'll be more Bitcoin for each miner if it's reduced there. So yeah, it's positive news. I mean, the miners, look at the start of the year where we were and look at where we are now. We've seen a massive increase in difficulty this year, and that severely impacted the amount of Bitcoins from these miners, especially the miners that aren't growing hash rate. So if you're growing hash rate, we've always said before, keep up with the global hash rate in terms of percentage growth. So if you were, looking at the global hash rate increasing and it's increasing this year, you want to make sure that your own company hash rate is growing up as in correlation with that there. because you don't want to be left behind in this space. But this is welcomed, a potential drop. But as I say, we're 9 days away from that, and we'll review it again next week as we get closer, and we'll get a better indication when we're a couple of days out.
Yeah, really quite amazing to watch these results start to pour in. Now we're eagerly anticipating September month-end results as well, Anthony. So that will be, I guess, the flavor of the week this week. We're off to Amsterdam on Saturday. So we've got another big week of travel. Obviously, the event coming up there. In addition to that, Anthony, we had a few pieces of news out this last week. And the next one I wanted to talk about comes from Bit Digital. It's in relation to some new hires they've had. And this is a consistent theme we've seen now at Bitfarms. We just talked with Ben about some changes in personnel and org structure there. We've seen Marathon starting to expand into HPC related hires. Now we see Sam Tabar and Bit Digital announcing some key appointments or approvals for their HPC business, including Benjamin Lamson as head of revenue and Tom Sanfilippo as CTO or Chief Technical Officer. So we're starting to really see some positioning or jockeying within the structure of these companies themselves, Anthony, to take advantage of these alternate revenue streams.
Absolutely, and what we do know, if you think about the separate business models that some of these companies are now developing, Bitcoin mining was quite a basic business really in terms of you buy miners, you plug them in, and you get rewarded with Bitcoin. You don't need a marketing team or a sales team to deliver that business. That business is all done in-house. And but now when you're looking at these companies moving into high performance computing, you absolutely need to achieve customers. Another way to achieve customers is to market what you're doing in the space. And then, you'll need a sales team to deliver the sale of that product to your customers. And then you'll need a team to make sure that you're getting paid on time, and what if you're not getting paid. So we'll see these companies now that are going into the HPC space start to have to recruit some really key people. And we're seeing from here today that these both of these hires have got experience required, and the fact that some of them have got experience in what they require going forward in terms of delivering that sort of HPC business model there. So we've highlighted this on the podcast before there, especially with a number of miners doing, purchasing GPUs and running a high performance computing at their sites. You've then got to then sell that business to the market and gain customers. And so Sam here, he's talked about this. I mean, at one point they only had 15 employees at Bit Digital. I bet they've got probably more than double that now in terms of what they require to maintain this space, and they're doing really well on the HPC side. They've got the two clients at the moment. Potentially will reach close to that 100 million target by the end of the year. And one of their newest clients, there's a potential there to take it to maybe 700 million of annualized revenue if they go to the extremes of their potential contract. So there's a mechanism there to increase the number of GPUs, and the revenues potentially from that could lead us to something like 700 million a year. So that would put Bit Digital really then focusing massively predominantly in the HPC space rather than the mining space.
Yeah, it sure would. And that new client you're referring to, Boosteroid, one of the largest cloud gaming providers, I think third in the world behind two of the hyperscalers. So super interesting there, Anthony. Now, I wanted to direct our attention towards the Power Mining Analysis website. So we talk about a lot of these metrics, a lot about these changes at these companies. Anthony, we've made some updates in terms of real-time data on the website. So I have a screen capture here, you guys. I just wanted to remind everyone, if you're looking for any of this information that we present on the channel, the monthly reports, we've actually got everything stored in the summary section on the website. So you can go in there, you can see all of the current month or previous month mining data. But you can also see a year-to-date tab, Anthony, which shows everything up until 2024, current month, obviously. You can see last year, And our newest implementation on the website is actually this live data summary where you can see real-time metrics based on calculations using enterprise value, current ratio. A lot of the metrics that we talk through, these are actually fed live NASDAQ ticker information. So these will be updating in real time, Anthony, and a great way to go in these 6 charts and kind of compare and contrast the miners in real time based on current share price. So I wanted to bring that up because, interestingly enough, in addition to the live data, we're also going to be posting our Miner Madness results on the website as well. So I thought it was a great time to do a little website refresher. So Anthony, with that being said, Miner Madness starting tomorrow. We've got some website enhancements. What can people expect in terms of this competition?
Compass Mining is your trusted partner in Bitcoin mining. Whether you're investing in one machine or thousands, our customizable solutions are tailored to meet your needs. We are your experts in Bitcoin mining, offering a platform where individuals and businesses can purchase hardware, host machines, and access a range of ancillary Bitcoin mining services. We also specialize in large-scale site development and data center operations. Discover more at compassmining.io and see how we can power your success today.
This competition's really taken off. We've got a lot of entries now, hundreds and hundreds of entries now, and today's the final day to enter. So we've asked people to select. We've got one course left of the year, and just to keep people's interest at heart, it's a free to enter competition. Select your best 3 miners that you think will do really well over the next 3 months. That'll beat all the other miners in terms of share price growth. And you rank them 1, 2, 3. We'll take those 3 miners and we'll notionally invest $150 in one miner, $100 in your second miner, and $50 in your third. So a total of $300 notionally invested. We'll plug that into the computer and that will deliver us on a regular basis how people's performance is. And we'll highlight during the 3 months, and we'll talk about in the podcast, how some of the retail analysts are doing, and some of the actual people in the space who do this on a day-to-day basis. So you're competing with a number of players like Sebastian. Obviously, you and me, Bryce, will be putting our choices up there. Bitcoin mining guy, DR Lewis has put his in there, A-Trade. So, you know, Freedom by 40. There's a lot of people out there put their details on there. I'm probably leaving names out here, but we'll get all those on there so you can see how they compare. And it just keeps everything interesting. We all want to be in the Bitcoin mining space. And this is an opportunity just to sort of like, as we go through this final quarter, we've been talking about, you know, potentially this is the start of the bull run. Will it be the start of the bull run? You know better than we do. Pick your 3 miners and let's see how you go. Now, when it gets to the end of the year, we'll take the closing price of the mining stocks as at the 31st of December and the closing price of your Bitcoin prediction. That's really important too. So don't forget to add your Bitcoin price prediction, because in the event we have more than one entry choosing the same 3 miners in the same order, we need something to differentiate between those. So by putting in your Bitcoin price prediction, that's sort of like a tiebreaker, because we're only talking about 30 public miners here. So some people might have the 3 same miners, and that wouldn't be totally unexpected, the way some of the miners have been performing already this year. But then again, you might think some of those that have underperformed this year might actually do well in the last quarter. So do your research, but you've only got a short space of time, because literally in about 15 hours time, whatever, it stops then, and we'll close the doors to then, and then we'll start sort of collating everything. And as each week goes by, we'll include in the newsletter sort of maybe the top 10, top 20 positions in the competition, so people know who's doing well and what they've selected. And we'll do regular updates on the podcast to highlight as well, because it'll be a good talking point. So tune into the podcast for that reason as well. Now, in terms of prizes, there's going to be some great prizes. I mean, we've already reached out to some of the miners to provide some of the swag, and that'll be sent through there. So there'll be lots of swag to issue to winners. Now, also, we've got the potential of getting some ASIC machines as well. It won't be like S21 miners, but these would be older miners. But it'd be an opportunity to have your own miner. Now you can probably put on the mantelpiece or on display in your property. But you're part of this space, and you want to sort of like, I've never come into only when I visited sites come into contact with real miners, and I've looked at one and thinking, yeah, I wouldn't mind having one of those. So I'm going to make sure that my predictions are going to be hopefully
you
giving me
better
a chance
get
of
a
winning one of these. So, but as I say, we'll reach out and we'll get more prizes and we'll keep you abreast of that. But there will be prizes for the winners at the end of this. No problem. And let's just keep the interest going. But yeah, I really appreciate, there's hundreds and hundreds of people have entered up to now. So we've got Chris doing all the updating of all the sheets and everything like that. And then we're going to get all the tables done and all the formulas put in there so that we know on a daily basis who's doing well, and we'll keep people abreast. But it's a great free entry competition, bit of fun, and no prizes for the winners. So, what more could you ask for in the last quarter? Keeps everyone happy, everyone interested, and you know what? We're all a bit competitive out there.
We certainly are. Anthony, you better show well in this competition, else Power Mining might not have a lot of legs to stand on. I'm hoping to get my hands on one of those ASICs. You're right, they're relic ASICs. I might get my kids to hold it. We'll put it right in the holiday card, Anthony. That could be my Christmas photo for the family, the grandparents there. We're going to get some great prizing, you guys. I've got a screenshot right now as of this morning, the top 3 picks. So IREN in over 19% of everyone's entry overall, whether that's first, second, or third pick. We've got CleanSpark in 16.5% of entries. Bitfarms just shy of 10. Riot in runner-up, 4th position, and CIFR has actually overtaken Cores now. So Bit Digital overtook Cores on Friday. CIFR's now pushed Cores into 7th. So we are seeing some jockeying going on there, Anthony. And speaking of Riot in 4th place, we actually have Jason Less on the channel this week as well. So we heard from Ben and Bitfarms last week in relation to the settlement with Riot. Looking really forward to getting the other side of that coin, or the perspective from Jason Less and Riot's side of things as well. So make sure you guys are tuned in for that one. We've got Riot coming out on Wednesday, and then a great interview with Compass Mining on Thursday. Now, Anthony, in addition to the top picks here, we also got a printout of the average Bitcoin price, looking like just north of $95,000. So anything surprising from these initial Miner Madness results?
In terms of the top 3, I say no. And I know this because I've done regular annual surveys across thousands and thousands of followers to determine what their picks were in previous years, not from a competition perspective, but indicate to me your top 3 miners. If we go back to 2021, it was I can tell you now, it was the likes of Hive, Hut 8, and Bitfarms. And in 2022, we had Marathon, Riot, and Bitfarms. In 2023, we had CleanSpark, IREN, and Bitfarms. There's starting to be a consistency here. 2024, we've got IREN, CleanSpark, and Bitfarms. Bitfarms seems to have that real following there. They're very much always in that top 3. And so, maybe people have that, obviously enjoy the fact that, they've got the likes of Ben Gagnon as the CEO, and he was the chief mining officer and, one of the brightest people in the space. So, will that go there? IREN, we know, have been very strong this year in terms of delivering hash rate. So you look at where IREN were a couple of years ago, just over 2 years ago, 1.7 exahash. They're going to report 21 exahash this week when they announce their September update. So that's a massive drive there. And, they've still got to get to their target, which they will do by the end of the year, of 30 exahash as a minimum, probably 31 exahash, because they've achieved an extra exahash in Q3 than they're anticipating. So people still expect them to go another 10 to the end of the year, 31. CleanSpark have been doing some great stuff as well in terms of growing their hash rate. They're already over 26 exahash, and we expect that to grow when we get their results as well. And they're going to be 37 by the end of the year. Now, the interesting part now is Bitfarms. Obviously, we had Ben on the podcast last week, and it was a great podcast. Again, a lot of people viewed that. If you haven't seen the podcast, I'd go back and have a look at that podcast, or even go onto one of the onto Apple or Amazon, or even Spotify and about 17 other platforms. We deliver these podcasts all over so that when you're out and about, if you're going for a walk or a run, you're in the car, you can listen to the podcast on a number of different media platforms. So, and the numbers that we're seeing, it looks like many of you are doing that anyway. So that's really good. We've seen lots and lots of uptick in the actual media podcast in recent months. We only brought it out, I think, in April and May, and we're already seeing, thousands and thousands of updates in these podcasts. That's really good to see. But Bitfarms and Riot, we've talked about them over the last few months in terms of the Bitfarms, being potentially taken over by Riot, and we know they're in a sort of like an agreement phase now till 2026. But it was interesting to see how many people still think of Riot could really have a good quarter. I'm certainly in that group that think, Riot have had some, I'd say disappointing quarters in terms of production for probably the last 2 years. And we've been down to that site and we've just started to see some green shoots coming through these last few months. And we hope September, when we are looking towards whoever you're praying to, and just seeing if we can get a good month operationally. Yes, they've been doing their strategy for energy strategy, and if you can convert that to an equivalent and add that to the production, they're still short of where they should be. So we want to see a really good month. I'm keeping the faith. Riot might well feature in my top three actually, because I think they could deliver. I'm sure they're going to deliver their hash rate, but it's not just about hash rate. It's about making sure you're operating that hash rate. That's a really key thing. It's not just having the miners in there. You might as well have them in a garage somewhere if they're not going to be actually utilized. And so, they've got that great facility at Corsicana. They're filling out. Building B1 is either energized now or about to be energized in September. So today's the last day. That was the last update. So we expect them to rally there as well. But I was quite interesting to see, TeraWulf and Core Scientific not in that top group, because if you think about the HPC business this year and the way that's affected the share prices, do you think there's still a little bit more to go there? I mean, Core Scientific, next year they start getting these revenues from CoreWeave. That's a big deal. And CoreWeave aren't stopping at Core Scientific. They've already turned around and said they're going to invest in the UK. They'll look at other sites as well. And so they're not stopping. So, if people think there's an issue with CoreWeave, I don't think there's an issue. They're a big player in the space. They're growing, growing, growing. This is the space to be in at the moment. This is a talking point across miners in terms of that discussion. While the Bitcoin price is still in that 63, 64,000 range, HPC is dominating the conversation. But as I say, if it goes to 130,000, Bitcoin mining turns that conversation around quite rightly. And, no one's turned around and said they're going to stop mining. Everyone's going to keep Bitcoin mining, but they're looking at HPC as an opportunity. So where we see all these miners with HPC rally this year, are people thinking that's over now, or do they think there's another opportunity? I still think there's an opportunity. As we get closer to some of these delivering big numbers, the stock price will go. And, that contract, once it's up and running, is a big number. And I don't think that's anywhere near factored into the share price at the moment, believe you me. So I think people do some due diligence on that. But yeah, it's interesting, and we'll put out probably tomorrow or the next day the final splits across each of the miners to show where people voted for. As I say, it's all a bit of fun, but it's competitive, and it'll be interesting to see how these go on there. I'm sure most of you guys out there do this in terms of sports teams. Well, now you can do it in terms of mining teams there. So this is your fantasy miner madness league, and we'll be regularly showing who's doing well. And hopefully, no one's out there to take our jobs away from us, Bryce. So we need to put up in a good footing when we put our three picks out later today.
We certainly do. Riot's actually in my top position, so we'll be featuring those later on in the week here. Anthony, interesting you bring up no company has turned off the Bitcoin mining yet. I've said at many conferences, you'll never meet an ex-Bitcoin miner, and it appears that's true even with the companies involved in Bitcoin mining. Now, the final piece I wanted to touch on here quickly, Anthony, you mentioned this a few times. last day of Q3. So companies like Riot, for example, CleanSpark, Marathon, these guys are sitting on a phenomenal amount of Bitcoin as part of their HODL strategy based on the FASB or our fair accounting rules that have changed this year and really become adopted by most of the NASDAQ companies. They're now allowed to reassess the value of this Bitcoin based on the closing price of the last day of the quarter, which happens to be today. So Anthony, obviously we don't know where Bitcoin's going to end out the day, but can you give us a quick update on how we're looking compared to the last day of Q2 and whether or not these companies are going to be in a favorable or unfavorable light right now?
Yeah. So if you look at the Bitcoin price today and compare it to the Bitcoin price at the end of quarter two, it's literally just less than $1,000 between the price of Bitcoin then. So $1,000 improvement. So those were the HODL, and let's use Riot because Riot just got over 10,000 coins. That would be close to 10 million of unrealized gains that will be added to their financial position. So not a significant amount. So I think quarter three for the majority of miners will be still, a challenging period in terms of margins, in terms of the fact that they're from a cash position, some of them might be making, enough to pay the bills. But when you start adding in things like depreciation and stock compensation, these are real costs to the company. They're not just made up numbers. They're real costs. When you go and buy equipment or buy or build facilities, these assets depreciate, and it's a true cost of recovery. And in terms of stock compensation, well, if the company wants to issue, large amounts of stock compensation, yes, it's not a cash cost, but it is an actual cost to the company because those shares effectively then dilute the company and reduce the position that each retail shareholder has in the company. And so I'll say now, I think we're going to be like quarter two, where no miner achieved effectively a net income. We might have the likes of Marathon who got over 26,000 Bitcoin. But that's going to give them a 26 million support in terms of an unrealized gain. And so would that get them to agree? It may be. It really depends on the month. We know that they had a big loss in the last quarter, and so potentially they'll have a loss again. So this is why this last quarter of the year really important. See the Bitcoin price rise to give this respite to miners. Even those that are selling on a daily basis still need to get a good revenue in to cover costs and to cover all costs. Those with the HODL benefit a little bit, obviously more during the green periods because the unrealized gains in Bitcoin price gets added into their income statements. But equally, when it's red quarters, that impacts them from a negative point of view. So it seems to be a little bit of a roller coaster ride at the moment for them. But we are entering what we believe and what the analysts believe, and all the people that I've had on the show and lots of people on social media have been saying, this is where the bull cycle tends to start from. So we'll keep you updated on that there. But I don't expect to see any massive changes in terms of what metrics we saw last time. And bear in mind, this quarter is the first quarter where we've got it's totally post-HODL. So the last quarter incurred a little bit of the pre-halving. This quarter is fully post-halving. So that will show us, it's a bigger impact than the previous quarter released. So I expect it to be a red quarter for most of the miners.
Yeah, I would tend to agree, unfortunately, Anthony, unless we see a massive spike here in the last few hours. I just got a notification from Alessandro, very fitting post for the close of our podcast here. So only hours left in the month. The 30th of September, we're sitting at 63.6 in terms of price. So based on that, this is now the best September ever in terms of percentage increase in month. It's the highest absolute close price in a September ever. Prior to this was around 43,800 in the September of 2021. And as we alluded to in the intro, Anthony, every time we've closed September green, we've went on to have 3 consecutive months or all of Q4 be green as well. So there you have it, guys. Time will tell, as we always say. Make sure you get your Miner Madness picks in. Let us know what you thought of today's episode, how you're feeling about this impending or potentially upcoming bull run. We'll be back here tomorrow. We'll see you there.